Hi, my name is Keith Cooper of Northlight Images. This is part of a series of short videos looking at specific prints I've made over the years and giving some of the background of them, a little bit of technical detail, and a few other odds and ends that may be of interest to people as to some of the why I did prints, what I was looking for, what I was showing in them, all sorts of stuff like that. But as I say, there is a series, there is a playlist for it. Anyway, to this one. These are the Reed Beds at Snape in Suffolk, on the Suffolk coast. It was on a stormy day in March. You can see a shower in the background. It snowed later that day. It was very variable weather. But what's special about the picture? Well, apart from that, I'm from Suffolk, from the Suffolk coast, and things like this just remind me of of where I am, where I went to do a lot of my early photography, driving around the countryside, cycling around the countryside even. And this one here, square format, tends to make a more static look, and some would go, oh no, you put the horizon right across the middle, why not put it further down here or at the top here or something like that? Well, I wanted to emphasize the difference between the reeds. This is the reeds in winter. These reeds, I don't know whether these particular ones are used for thatching or not, but anyway, there are lots of reed beds and things like that. This is, the river comes up. This is near Snape Maltings. Aldeburgh is just on the coast, not very far away. But in looking at this, what have I used lens-wise? Well, actually it's taken with the Canon TSE 17 tilt-shift lens. And the lens, this is actually a stitched image, and the lens has been shifted up and shifted down with quite a bit of overlap, and then cropped to square. It has close-up here. So for the bottom half of the picture, I probably only focused 20-30 yards away. It's taken perhaps at f11 or something like that, which means that these are far enough away that there is plenty of detail in the reeds here. For the top half, I took the picture, I would have set it at infinity. Now, you have to be careful with a lens like that because it focuses past infinity. Now, it's useful for tilt-shift lenses, but can be annoying when you're just using them as an ordinary lens because you're used to perhaps that end stop signifying where infinity is. Well, just to be a bit more careful with them. So I would have focused perhaps on the distant trees here. In stitching them together, and this is a simple stitch in Photoshop, there's nothing tricky about it, the fact, the difference in focus or anything, but the wide angle lens, this gives the equivalent of perhaps a 14mm lens cropped square. But you'll notice in particular the way the sky looks like that. Wide angle lens effect. I've done a few I've done a few videos looking at use of wide angle lens and shift as well. This is simple up down shift. If I'd used diagonal shift and stitched the images, I would have been able to change the emphasis of where the clouds appear to be going. So I could make the clouds look more as if they were going that way, more if they were going that way. It's just a trick of the projection of a rectilinear wide angle lens. In terms of the print, this was one that was made when I was testing papers. And I can tell this is unusual for me. This is a textured paper, and this paper almost feels not dissimilar to the wallpaper behind here. I don't use textured papers very often, but this one is a matte paper. It lends a flatness to the image. Now I've printed this image on luster and Baryta style papers where you get a stronger color to it. You have to try, and when you're printing this, make sure that not too much color introduced in some of the clouds because it can distract a bit. But it's winter. I don't want a warm, bright, inviting feel to it. Somebody said, oh, it's one of Keith's dismal pictures. Well, your choice of dismal is up to you as to what you think about it. But this one, this is Suffolk coast for me. And as I say, the fact that I've caught the heavy rain showers and the weather was very changeable. Incidentally, if I remember rightly, this is the picture that may even have been used, I believe it's on the back of my book on tilt-shift lenses. It's in there somewhere because it was an example of how to do stitching. But in terms of composition, I just like the way the clouds look like they're trying to escape off the edge of the frame. And that is a bit of distortion you get. There are various ways you can deal with that. But as I say, it's a simple up-down stitch, printed, pigment inks. I can't remember the printer, would have been rolled, but it's quite a thin textured paper. Textured paper doesn't intrude too much. I find you have to be a bit careful using textured papers because sometimes they get in the way of the image. But equally well, this one being on a matte paper means I've been able to be, it was a little less tricky to set up with the lighting here so as to avoid reflections and the like. But there you go, Snape Reed Beds, Suffolk. Yeah, just a picture that personally I like. Whether you like the composition will depend very much on how you view pictures and things and do stuff. But you don't have to stick to rules about always having them a third of the way up and stuff like that. Yeah, rules, guidelines, they work sometimes, sometimes they don't. Anyway, thanks for watching. So I'll have more of these pictures in sort of overviews of them. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. Thanks for watching. Bye.